Liar. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, August 7th, 2024. Time for another show. What better time than now, one might ask. And busy morning and some traffic in and through KITM World Headquarters today. Hey, Mom's here, so she doesn't have to text me all of the notes, although, well, now I've just probably prompted a text note. But hey, anyway, the point is, there might be some additional noise, and it will be fun and exciting and very down home and interesting. Like Tim Walz, who made, I don't know, maybe he comes in and makes some noise. He's a very down-to-earth individual. He was in Philadelphia yesterday for the kickoff of, well, it wasn't really the kickoff of kickoff of his campaign, I guess. Anyway, for vice president, and it's very exciting that we have decided to apparently run Ted Lasso for the vice presidency. Everyone loves him. And so the assignment this morning, of course, over at the New York Times, everyone loves Tim Walz. He seems very genuine and down to earth. Here's why that's bad for Kamala Harris and the Democrats. People are trying, Republicans striving mightily to come up with some way to jujitsu the weird back onto them. But of course, that was going to be difficult to begin with. And probably something actually maybe that factored into the selection process. The fact that he started the weird line about them, I think, makes it a little bit more difficult in the eyes of in the eyes of a public that's paying attention, which, maybe that's not us. It's you and me, but less so other people possibly, because we're so good. And they're so bad. But the idea of flipping that onto the person who started it is somehow a little bit different. Not beyond not beyond something that the Republicans would try anyway, sometimes because it's so ridiculous. And they certainly wouldn't have any shame about it. Anyway, they're doing their best to come up with something that they can attack him with. I believe they were completely prepared. Well, they were prepared to run against Joe Biden, and then the switch caught them by surprise, and they really didn't know what to do with Kamala Harris. So they began then, obviously she's got to choose a vice president, so they geared up to attack the people that they thought would be selected, and it seems they know us fairly well. They prepared for a Josh Shapiro selection, and of course, apparently they prepared with thinly veiled anti-Semitic attacks. And then I guess they thought that they had done such a good job on the anti-Semitic flyers attacking Josh Shapiro that their staff, or some rogue staff member, as they put it, when they were asked to account for this thing, distributed those flyers in the parking lot outside of the scheduled events anyway, regardless of the fact that by that point everyone had heard that it was Tim Walz and not Josh Shapiro. But I have done such a great job maligning this person for being Jewish, I can't stop now. Besides, even if he's not the vice presidential candidate, he's still Jewish, and we're still angry about that. So here you go. Trump actually also tried to launch, I guess they were ready to launch anti-Semitic attacks across the board. Then they were so angry that they didn't get to launch their anti-Semitic attacks that they decided to attack Democrats for being anti-Semitic by not nominating the guy that they had prepared their anti-Semitic attacks against. And they actually went to the press with this one and said, nowhere in the top, well, I don't know if they went to the press. Now that I'm thinking about it, that doesn't count. It's not the same thing. Screaming on Truth Social is not going to the press. The press comes to you, which is remarkable and ridiculous, and they really ought to reevaluate that. And I guess since the days of the Drudge Report, they've really been falling asleep on the job and just taking their work assignments from what's on the laptop. But anyway, he took it to them via Truth Social, saying that you won't find anywhere in and on Twitter, others, his surrogates on Twitter, you won't find Jewish people in the upper echelons of the Democratic leadership. It's just this. So there you go. So they're so super anti-Semitic. Now, of course, you will not find them in the upper echelons or any echelons of the Republican Party either. It's not that there aren't Jewish Republicans, but they're few and far between, and when they do rise up in the ranks of the Republican Party, something weird happens. They fall out of windows, they get defeated in primaries, but there aren't that many of them. And, of course, there are a considerable number in the Democratic Party. And so, of course, it was answered directly on Twitter by Chuck Schumer, who says, hey, that's news to me. I'm only the Senate Majority Leader of the United States Senate. So it's a bit of a surprise. Of course, also Kamala Harris married to Doug Emhoff, and that's kind of a big deal. And they were almost kind of sort of considering Josh Shapiro for vice president, but I guess that was the attack. He didn't make it across the finish line, so therefore the Democratic Party are the real anti-Semites. Let's all get together with Nazis who are very fine people, occasionally. Or have them to Pervalago for dinner, as he did with Nick Fuentes. So it's a little bit of a wild day. As I said, they tried to come up with some things. By the way, they went to their Jewish well for Chaya Raichik to try to chime in with a meme that would totally stick against Tim Walz. And, it's a little bit early in the morning to go to this, but they were looking for shock value. They've decided that what will really work for people and totally not make people think that Republicans are weird, that as they roll out this jolly elf of a candidate and everybody praises them to the heavens, and there's always a honeymoon period, but they struck with Tampon Tim, which has its origins, well, nowhere. They just made it up. There's a seed of truth to it, and the one they want to point to, I think, is that he signed legislation while governor that would mandate the placement of appropriate period products of all kinds in the public school bathrooms. And then they decided that was either some sort of horrible interference and or maybe possibly had something to do with transgenderism because something. And you can stretch it and get to a place where you can turn it into something. But, right, I guess for the morning listening audience, feminine hygiene products is, I guess, the less shocking thing. Although I have seen this migration to just saying, that's what they are. And I think Amanda Marcotte prefers calling them. Just saying, hey, it's period products. It's, of course, we already know that that's in his nickname is the Tampon Tim thing. But it was all sorts, a wide range of products. And I think there was also some theorizing that perhaps while he was a teacher at some point, he and other teachers in the high schools stocked such products so that the girls in the class could discreetly and without having to make a fuss, should they forget to have any ready or there not be any in the bathrooms, avail themselves of it. So, there it is. He's bad. Tim Walz helped your daughter. What an a-hole. We got to get rid of that guy. So hopefully that goes nowhere. Chaya Raichik, of course, a lunatic in her own right, and thank God she put it on display immediately. There you go. There's the Jewish people in the upper echelons of the Republican Party producing fine propaganda that we can all be proud of. I think they had a couple other attacks, including some other dumb stuff, maybe even about the way he coached football. We'll comb through it. None of it seems to be sticking, and it's really kind of interesting and pathetic to watch them work to try to reverse the weird spell that they cast on themselves, and they can't do it because they're all so weird. Greg Dworkin is here. He knows they're weird. This will be your first chance to comment on the fun guy that is Tim Walz. Good morning, Greg.
Good morning. There is just so much to talk about.
Isn't there?
But just let's put this in context.
What is it that we're putting in context?
If you're going to look at successful presidents,
no,
two-term
I'm not.
popular presidents.
Okay.
The thing that they all have in common, people like them.
Well,
you may get annoyed that people
does.
said that about Reagan, but they did. Bill Clinton, with all his flaws, people liked him, lovable rogue, that sort of thing.
Yes.
Okay. Obama, people just liked him.
Yeah. You have skipped George W. Bush.
People didn't like him.
Oh,
well, they did.
Actually. Some people did. They wanted to have a beer with him.
Him.
He didn't have any beers with him. He didn't want to have beers with them.
People say, how could you be so nice to George W. Bush's walker? And David Gregory famously said, he was doing Meet the Press at the time, I like him.
Yeah. There were certainly people who did like him, and he made himself adorable by painting afterwards, and everyone forgot that he was many times a jerk. But he's nothing compared to Trump.
His mouth about democracy,
yeah,
is horrible. But then again, he's a party hack. That's where he came from.
Yeah,
he ran his father's campaign. He's just like Justice Roberts and Brett Kavanaugh. These guys aren't neutral,
true,
political senior, wise heads of the party. They're political hacks.
Yeah. Right.
But in any case,
people in the party sometimes like them.
I wanted to talk about my local newspaper.
Oh. Hartford Courant or
the Danbury News Times.
That local.
I'm talking local.
Oh man. Okay. Oh, I haven't opened my pictures yet. Here I go.
Right looking. At the bottom.
Oh, bottom. All right.
Says the News Times, and the big banner headline, people love to be with him. And let me tell you, they weren't talking about J.D. Vance.
And here's why that's bad.
Well, they didn't do that. They're not the New York Times.
Right.
So
it's just the News
Times. This is how
Times.
It's going out.
The New S Times.
And in fact, it's true. And whether you're cuddling a piglet or whether you're being embraced by children because you're feeding them.
Right.
This is Tim Walz. And, how do you pronounce his name? Balls to the walls. That's how you pronounce it.
Well.
That mnemonic will help you remember.
Okay. Was that an issue? Walz. W-A-L-Z. Were people saying something else?
So he
checks
all the boxes, as Steve Bannon noted.
Mm-hmm.
He sergeants are important in the military.
Oh, okay.
Non-commissioned officers.
Oh, yes, right.
They run the place.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're on the outs with the sergeant, you're up the creek.
Yeah, not great. Okay.
Okay.
Oh, so I remember the other attack now. Yes.
There's staff sergeants. There's master sergeants.
There are.
And then there's one rank above that. I can't even remember what it is. I'm not military.
Dick Sergeant, I think.
No. That's he wasn't even the first. He was the second.
Okay. You kids, I'm not just cursing, is a guy's name. Anyway. Yeah.
The point is, he was the highest ranked non-commissioned officer to serve in the U.S. Congress.
Highest ranked non-commissioned. Okay.
Yeah. He was like the highest rank of sergeant you can get.
Right.
You
Take
basically
that, all you SEALs.
Run the place.
Okay.
We're talking executive experience here. And then, of course, governor of Minnesota. He's got a really, really strong resume. He was a teacher for 20 years. He was a social studies teacher, a geography teacher.
Yeah.
He once did a map class with his students and using mapping of various and sundry things, not just like where's the capital, but also, what's your the best product that you're known for, that sort of thing.
Demographics, et cetera.
Was able to correctly predict a year before it happened that the next genocide was probably going to be Rwanda. I mean, he's good.
That's data science as much as mapping.
It's
more so than mapping, I would guess. Yeah.
He's got skills, okay?
Interesting.
And by the way, he was a football coach. So in addition to the military and football coach, he's also a sharpshooter. He was the best shot in Congress because they have these annual things that you do. I mean, all of this was presented at the rally yesterday.
What a disgusting
Obama Vibes rally. The guy is just fantastic. And the chemistry between him and Kamala Harris are just very much on display. And the thing is, that rally, which was hugely attended, okay, was really, really well done. They, again, put it together relatively quickly.
Everyone.
They got the right audience, incredibly enthusiastic. And first, they have Josh Shapiro.
Yeah, he's around.
Enthusiastically
introducing
the two of them. But the real point is, you look at Josh Shapiro, it was an absolutely fantastic speech for somebody running for president.
Now, wait a minute.
You immediately get the impression that, okay, you can't have two starting quarterbacks on the team. Shapiro sees himself as a starting quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Walz sees himself as a very competent backup who's happy to sit on the bench. Mm-hmm. And you go, okay, I know why Harris chose him. And I know why Harris didn't choose Shapiro. And it's got nothing to do with anti-Semitism.
Okay.
And you're seeing it before your own lying eyes.
Yeah. Somebody's got to hold the ball for those place kicks,
Exactly. That's the guy, So Walz is more than happy to do that.
Excellent.
And Shapiro would say, well, I'm going to do a fake play and run in the end zone. And Harris said, that's not how I wrote it up. You're fired.
Yeah.
So that's basically why he didn't get the job. He's good. And he's going to be a great surrogate. And, he'll run for president someday. He'll probably run for Senate first.
Okay.
Pete Buttigieg is good. He's probably going to run for president someday again. But first he's going to be UN ambassador and learn every language in the world.
He knows them already.
Yiddish and Romani. He already knows Norwegian and Spanish. But these guys aren't going to be on the ticket with Kamala Harris. She wanted somebody who she could work with. And you saw it last night. And it was perfect.
Okay. I mean, you saw it last night.
Well, you didn't see it, but I sent you a clip which you need to play.
Well, all right. I need to set that up then. Okay,
so
I'll start working on that.
Very, very top. It's
I can
the
do
first
this somehow.
X. It says 0.26 seconds of soundbite.
Really?
You need to play it.
Okay. Well,
and that's from the rally.
There's the chat on this thing here. All right, I need to scroll.
Yeah, so while you're setting it up, let me just tell you about something else. So while all this is going on,
yes,
the Beltway press, the cloistered in the bubble Beltway press, unlike my local paper, who was pointing out how just like avuncular and normal Tim Walz is.
Yeah.
Okay. Who made this point? One of the commenters said, the thing is, you saw on display yesterday, Josh Shapiro is a superb politician and Tim Walz is like a normal person.
Yeah. Okay.
And so that's absolutely fantastic. So they're asking Republicans, these reporters, in their cloistered Beltway fashion, what do you think of the choice? They picked Walz and not Shapiro. And the Republican operatives that they interviewed said, we're elated. We're happy with this. We were worried we were going to lose the election. Now, notice the subtext, admitting that they were losing.
Okay.
We were worried we were going to lose the election. But now that they chose Walz, we win.
No.
Pennsylvania's back in play. We're back in the, and what are you talking about? These are the same people who said Dobbs was no longer salient in 2022.
Yes.
These are the people who really don't understand what's going on here. They think they're going to be successful at painting this 24-year non-commissioned officer, marksman, teacher, football coach, as some far-left guy from San Francisco, which, by the way, he only visited like last month for the first time.
Well, congratulations. He did bring home a lifetime supply of rice-a-roni.
Yeah. Well, who wouldn't?
Right. San Francisco
and
treat.
Little model cable cars. But still, they think that that's a winner, just like they think that one of them actually said they think J.D. Vance was a bad choice. This guy's worse.
I mean, they're really
you read it and you start laughing, and then you look at the Beltway people who just eat this up, and you go, what?
What's wrong
Susan
with
Glasser, Walz suggests Harris subscribes to the Obama and Trump theory of elections. It's all about the base, motivation over persuasion. As if she swallows hook, line, and sinker the Republican painting of Tim Walz as a far lefty who only appeals to the Bernie bros and nobody else.
What?
Which is the dumbest, stupid framing you could possibly think of. Of all people, Ron Fournier calls her out and says in his Midwestern nice way, respectfully disagree. In Midwest states like Michigan, Walz is far more culturally aligned with swing voters than any other VP, long or short lister. Democratic issue with these voters has always been cultural rather than policy. CC fellow Michigander Matthew Dowd for a gut check, and Matthew Dowd says cultural alignment with swing voters is key, way more important than policy positions. Walz has that.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the Beltway's already buying the crap from the Republican operatives who are trying to spin this. This is Philip Wegman, who's reporter for Real Clear Politics, who actually does a nice job on this tweet thread. Republicans are privately thrilled with Tim Walz. Half a dozen GOP operatives tell me Walz will easily be defined as a radical leftist who's been plagiarizing California's agenda, fits the Democratic caricature of white working class voters but doesn't alienate the pro-Hamas base, opens Democrats to a Swiftboat 2.0 attack due to his sudden retirement before his unit left for Iraq. And don't forget, Crystal Civita ran the Swiftboat pact for George Bush against John Kerry. Appeals to the Democratic base, not the general electorate. Is it possible to select a VP pick worse than J.D. Vance? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he goes on to add, this reporter, this is a snapshot of what Republicans believe to be true in the moment. Projection and miscalculation are, of course, common.
Mm-hmm.
And then he adds, oh, by the way, Democrats reply, good luck with that.
Yeah, they really, I don't know, they seem geared to accept this sort of nonsense. There's a very broad anti-pundit uprising happening, essentially.
Yeah, because they're ridiculous.
Yeah, it just doesn't make any sense.
What's going on here? They don't understand what they're seeing, or they're being paid not to understand what they're seeing. I would say the latter with the publishers and the people who write the headlines, but the former, they're just not getting it. They're just spending too much time talking to Republican operatives as if Republican operatives have their pulse on the country. And it's not true. There's something organically happening that the pundits didn't foresee. You can't plan enthusiasm.
Oh.
You can't plan for the kind of organic excitement you're seeing at these Harris rallies.
Yeah.
They didn't see it coming. They don't see it now. And they're just like they're flummoxed.
Well,
they have their narrative.
Too bad.
Trump is ahead. Well, Harris is ahead in all the polls by about 2 points.
Yeah.
Guess what? Trump isn't even ahead.
Too bad, man. You have to figure it out. Oh, I have I think I have the sound clip available.
This is Tim Walz at the rally.
All right, let's see. Are we going to hear it? No, because it didn't work correctly.
Don't play it.
No, I hit what's happening here? The sound is up. Is there something else I need to turn up? All right, we'll try it one more time here. No, he's talking, but no sound coming out. The sound's turned on.
Yeah, okay. Just make sure that
all right, I'm going to keep working on it.
The clip itself sometimes is muted.
Yeah, no, I clicked that. That's up. Mystery. So,
all right.
I'll be working on it again. Okay. I didn't want to try it in the middle of everything you were saying.
Tim Walz made weird happen. What he offers the ticket is much more. Walz has a genuine feel for the concerns of people in conservative corners of the country. This is the Washington Post writing Karen Tumulty. She gets it.
Yeah.
Susan Glasser doesn't.
There we go.
Here we go. What do you mean?
I found the problem.
Okay. Fix it. Play it.
Oh, what now? All right. Here we go. All right. I'll try this again. Oh, now I got to click on the right window and roll everything back. But there was okay. Never mind what the issue was.
Like all regular
there we
people
go.
I grew up with.
What? Why did you stop?
In the heartland, J.D. studied at Yale.
I'll pump this up.
Had his career funded by Silicon Valley billionaires.
Like all heartland people.
Bestseller trashing that community. Come on. That's not what middle America is. And I got to tell you,
he's weird.
I can't wait to debate the guy.
Listen to the crowd.
That's a roar.
But wait for his closer.
Oh, okay. Waiting.
He's got Jack Benny timing. Perfect.
Ooh. Big applause line.
He's not stepping on it.
That is if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. So, like all regular.
That is Tim Walz. He just works those things in, and he's smiling as he's twisting the knife into your back, and you don't even realize that you've been hit until like 10 minutes later. You realize you have no blood left.
Okay. Well, he's an Army guy. So there you go. That is interesting. That's a good line. I like it.
And the other one is the Republicans think they're going to run on crime. Well, let me point out that under Trump, crime was up.
Yes.
It was.
Right.
And then he adds, and that's not even counting the crimes that Trump's guilty of. The guy is good.
Yeah, good.
He's
all right.
Relatable. Okay, and
I
don't
told jokes
normally
in the Army.
do this.
Yeah.
But I'm going to read to you a comment that somebody made in the Pundit Round this morning.
All right. Congratulations. Someone makes it big.
So they said they're from Minneapolis.
Okay. Like Prince.
Mary Tyler Moore City.
Oh, okay.
Oh, by the way.
We'll go that way, yeah.
Speaking of Prince, did you know that Tim Walz did one of those fancy proclamations about Prince?
Oh.
No. Signed it with a full pen.
See? He's aware of all internet traditions. It's not an internet one.
The guy is just fantastic. So,
it's paying attention.
This says,
yes.
The commenter says, I went out to a rally watch party yesterday afternoon here in Minneapolis to watch our governor step into his potential role as VP. I really want to say in his new role as VP, but let's not get ahead of our skis.
Okay, fair.
We, my neighbor and I, were at a place called A Bar of Their Own, which is a woman-owned bar that focused solely on women's sports. The place was packed and as raucous as that Pittsburgh rally venture. Well, it was actually Philadelphia, but that's okay. I think, well, it's not okay if you're from Philadelphia.
Yeah.
I think what we witnessed last night was a masterclass in leadership and a peek into our political future. Oh, and those zingers from Walz about Trump's crimes and getting Vonce off the couch to debate him. I cringed a little, but boy, did those zingers go over like crazy with the bar crowd.
Yeah, I bet.
I was so hopeful by these two, Harris and Walz. I'm ready, as are millions of others, to shed the oppression of hate and ride that Harris-Walz train into a future of hope. The point is, those zingers went over fine with the crowd.
Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. Ah, yes, and now we're coming back. Welcome back, everyone, to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Edwards Radio. I almost forgot that we were coming back to do some more of this. We were just chatting during the break. You know, Tim Walz seems like a nice guy, and I'm sure people will be digging for dirt, I guess. He's done some things because he was a normal guy, but
minor dirt, but none of it's going to stick.
I think he had a DUI.
Trump says on Walz, nobody knew how radical Harris was. He's a smarter version of her. So now he gets his blacks aren't smart.
I see.
The left is taking over the Democratic Party. This stuff is old. It's tired. It's not working. You turn them on. You look at them. They're joyful. And that's what Walz mentioned several times during the rally. My lead here on the ticket, Kamala Harris especially, but we are bringing joy back to politics.
Yes.
And the United States. And you see it. And the place just lights up. He lights up. Everybody likes him. and they're going to try all these smears, and people are going to look at it and say, yeah, but I just like them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not going to work. They're going to win.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I hope we can we just get to it already and get rid of these guys?
Well, that's what every single time. Can we just get to it? When you actually get to it, it turns out to be better than anything you could possibly imagine. I'm going to step back just a little bit and say, look at this campaign. Look where we were a month ago.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay. And just to illustrate the point, I'm going to click on the ActBlue ticker tracker. Which is really good at looking at fundraising. And yesterday, after the announcement, they raised $41,338,000. And going by day, it's the sixth best day since 2020. Two of those days were after Biden stepped down and Harris stepped up. They got 68, 67, 66 million. The third and fourth days were around the death of RBG back in 2020. Okay. And then we have September 29th, 2020. I don't know exactly what happened then. And August 6th, 2024, both of which were 41 million days. Keep wanting to say thousands, but these are millions. This is like a lot of money.
Yeah.
So the enthusiasm is there. The money's there. The donation is there. People are volunteering to knock doorbells and
what would they do then?
Ring doors and just sign up for people. I mean, you want me to do it? I will do it.
Ram the ramparts.
Take
over the airports. Things. Yeah.
And so it's all good. So to talk a little bit more about the vice presidential things, but the point is, leading up to the vice presidential thing, this campaign takes we're doomed, and very professionally turns it around to a Harris campaign, seamlessly integrates the Biden people, hiring the ones who were like total Biden loyalists and just not here for this, like Donilon and a few other people, but bring in David Clough and a whole bunch of other Obama veterans so that they're battle tested, as they say, been there, done that, not phased, no drama Obama people, and who don't leak and who know what to do.
Okay.
And then they start to build excitement. Again, can't plan for it, but it's organic. The excitement builds. They have the announcement. Harris performs flawlessly. She has great introductions with Biden on the phone and then her own rally. Great lines about, if you want to, say it, tell me to my face, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
People love it. Then the build up to the VP, a little bit of a contrived drama about who she's going to pick, but that just makes people pay attention. Trump can't get a word in edgewise. He can't get onto the schedule. He does a rally or two here, and the only thing people talk about is how unhinged he is. Harris is still dominating the news. Then it comes up to the last weekend, where she does the 6 finalists thing. And word is that Shapiro was good, but, he started to ask about what his role was and, what powers will I have, and starts to negotiate what the vice presidential position is. Which is something that Gerald Ford did with Reagan. And Reagan didn't want to have any part of it. And so wound up picking George H.W. Bush because I need a vice president who knows their role, which is to go out and campaign for the next 100 days, and we'll worry about policy later, although we do need to govern together. And this isn't a co-presidency.
Okay.
And Harris looked at Shapiro and said, I'm not sure. But with Walz, I'm totally comfortable. So she picks him. And Shapiro's okay with it because, again, he's going to run for senator. He's fine.
He's got a lot ahead of him that he could be doing.
And notice, none of that has anything to do with that stupid anti-Semitism line that the Republicans are trying to push. Well, that isn't going to work because people can see with their own eyes what Shapiro was like and what Walz was like if they were unfamiliar with either one. And the Democratic explanation for what happened perfectly fits with what you saw.
Okay, good. That will be important. Normal people want to see that. I understand that. That makes sense. It's not contrived. I don't have to use pretzel logic or come up with some kind of crazy explanation or conspiracy theory. The objective reality meets with my other everyday mundane observation.
Right, exactly right. And so because all of that is organic, because all of that is not contrived, because all of that is real, the campaign itself doesn't really have a whole lot to do. This is not something they have to make up like they do on the Trump side.
Now.
This is something they simply have to manage, which in itself is not easy. You want to keep it going. You don't want to make errors, et cetera, et cetera.
They
don't have to manufacture it. It's real. And so all Harris has to do is ride that wave. Yeah. Now, you can't ride a wave forever. Yeah, but we only have 90 days left.
That's true. And if you do need to manufacture anything, you can do it in late August. It's all scheduled. There's already a factory built.
The next thing that happens is the Democratic National Convention, which is going to be a 10-day commercial for the Democrats.
Yeah.
3 days of what they say and 7 days of talking about it. So Trump doesn't even get on the schedule until Labor Day. And by then, he's going to be 6 points behind. He's already 3 points behind.
And he'll want to be on the golf course.
Well, what's going to happen is he's going to melt down, and that's what's happening. I mean, the latest thing that he posted is just unintelligible gibberish. You can try to find it. You can try to read it. Kamala is running against, Joe Biden is going to steal the convention, though. I hear the plot is that he's going to have a coup, and he's going to take back what was rightfully his so I can run against him.
Is that what you hear?
He wrote that.
Is there something wrong with your ear? Is that why you're hearing it?
Yeah.
It's weird. Oh yeah, that guy got shot at.
Right.
Everyone is
buzzing in my ear. Oh, I know why.
No one cares. Like 2 weeks later. I mean, it's unhinged. It's generally nonsense what he says, but I don't know. Somehow there's a special quality to it now. The desperation seems more palpable.
Right. And the same desperation. The giddy, oh my God, we have Tim Walz to run against that. First of all, you're not running against Tim Walz.
Right. You made that point yourself specifically in a network television interview. Vice President, doesn't matter. You're not voting on that.
Right.
Okay, we're not.
This is a post from Mark Cuban.
Okay.
Working on the pharma industry. So I don't know if it's a famous Mark Cuban or I paid for the check Mark Cuban, but he said something I like, so I pulled it.
Okay.
And he said, I think there's a lot of confusion on the role of the VP. Pre-election, the job is to campaign, period, end of story. The right move in a 100-day or less sprint to election day is to add the best campaigner, the person who connect the voters, particularly undecided voters, get them excited to vote for your candidate in a way that matches the vibe and the tone of the candidate. Mm-hmm. What the VP thinks about policy will make for polite conversation on the campaign plane, but is totally meaningless. So the contrast between Walz and Vance can't be any more stark. Walz talks about joy, hope, the future, and he's a strong counterpuncher. Vance doesn't talk about the future at all. He doesn't convey positive vibes at all. He's almost exclusively negative except when talking about Trump. That contrast could end up being the difference, and I think it will.
Okay.
In terms of what contribution the vice president makes to this. But, again, Karen Tumulty, Tim Walz made weird happen, and what he offers the ticket is much more. He has a genuine feel for the concerns of people in conservative corners of the country. And as other people have pointed out, there's this artificial garbage that the pundits push about why Democrats don't connect with rural red America.
Oh, yeah.
They need this, they need that. Well, they got it in Tim Walz. Yeah, well, that's not what we meant.
Right.
We meant something else.
Exactly.
Wait a minute. What did you mean? We meant that the best way for the Democrats to connect with rural America is to be conservative Republicans.
Yeah.
And if they're not doing what we told them to do.
Yep. That's pretty much it. In fact, I saw a great social media entry just to that effect. Micah, who a lot of people follow, is I don't know how you pronounce it. Is it Rince? R-I-N-C? Rincewind? Rincewind? I don't know.
Unfamiliar, but tell me about it.
But, I mean, this puts it right. Walz is proof that the pundits who demand that Dems appeal to rural voters, quote-unquote appeal to rural voters, don't mean explain progressive policy in a way that connects with rural voters. They mean be conservative in a way that I, the pundit, personally agree with. That's what they were looking for. You need to connect with rural voters. Okay, I did. I meant conservative.
He elected me. No, that's not what I meant.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that hits the nail on the head. It's the same thought, exactly, just expressed differently, and interestingly coming from, non-columnist published, just like you said, the feeling is organic, and people are organically saying it in ways that click. This is part of the anti-pundit uprising. Enough with these guys. There's no satisfying them. And also lots of people doing a good job reminding us, by the way, all these people who are now grousing or saying that it was somehow an incorrect pick are the people who told you in the middle of this joy fest, this outrageous, unification of the Democratic base and charging them up to go out and have this election and be excited, we're telling you a week or two ago that the real solution was that there should be some sort of mini primary and everybody should be backstabbing and backbiting during the campaign and fighting it out, and subterfuge.
Right. Anything less than that isn't democratic.
Right.
With small d.
Right, exactly. And this is the way people really want it to happen. And instead, people want to, hey, we picked two people who seem fun, interesting, and correct on the issues and genuine. We like it. Let's go. If the election were held today, I wish it was held today. Let's do it. Okay, I'll hold it every day for 90 days. Let's be excited for that long. Now you should have been subject to intrigues and double crossing, and that would have been much more fun if everything had been done in a smoke-filled room, if I were allowed in the smoke-filled room. Yeah, boo punditry.
Right. So here's one I'm reading live on Twitter by one of my favorite stupid pundits, who I think is for years I've said this, he's like one of the dumbest pundits ever, so I rarely quote him anymore. John Podhoretz says, here's a thought experiment. Josh Shapiro is Josh Shapiro in every way except his name is Chris Gentile. Would she have picked Walz? She wouldn't. And Tim Miller said, look, I wanted Josh. I was clear about that. I don't think there's evidence for this. Reporting indicates he was seen as a fellow lawyer who wanted to be a governing partner and hassled the veteran team with questions, but Tim Walz was a jolly, put me in coach type with a more complimentary vibe.
Right. I mean, they're just totally different feel from each of these candidates, and you can't do the job of stepping in for Biden late in the game and have to haggle over policy with somebody. You have to set the agenda and go. And I'm sure he's got great policy ideas, and he's probably going to have more policy influence from the outside than trying to muscle it in from the VP slot.
I can't overemphasize this. There's only 90 days left. We don't have time for this.
Yeah, and I mean, again, strategically, from a policy standpoint, I mean, Shapiro can, I think, be perhaps he should be glad that this happened this way. I mean, trying to get his position papers translated from vice presidential candidate, here, let me give you this position paper sort of thing, and having the storyline be, he's not getting his policy chops in, this is a source of tension, to, mail it to the backroom staff, send me your white paper on this, that, and the other thing, and we'll see if we can't absorb it as an advisory, give me your advice, not try to take over the campaign.
Well, listen, pundits, if you have advice to give on this, I got a better piece of advice.
Okay.
Why don't you suggest that what Harris really should have done is made each of her 6 excellent candidates for vice president, the vice president after she wins for 8 months, rotate, and then for her second term, she can decide which one was best. Because in this truncated, 100-day election, you don't really have time to do that. So, use the first 4 years to do that.
Yeah, why not?
And that's the real way to do it. And that way, at the end of it, you can have an open convention and see if people really want Harris.
Yeah. You're describing The Apprentice, guys.
To suggest, because you have to write something every week, and you might as well, do this kind of direct. But Oritz is an idiot. He always has been.
Well, okay.
But
lots of idiots around.
Some people just can't learn. They just can't do it. It's like watching Megyn Kelly deteriorate into I don't know what these days, because it's all
bleeding
these
from
pundits are they're all Dennis Miller. I mean, they're not funny. They're not insightful. They don't have any talent. I don't understand.
What about Dennis Quaid?
Where they were before they deteriorated, but now, ugh.
Yes. And speaking of Dennis and did you catch the Dennis Quaid quote? I don't know how this happened.
No.
It's not widely circulated yet, I guess, because it's weird and no one likes it. But another, we'll get out from underneath this weird thing. We have celebrities, Dennis Quaid apparently is a Trump supporter.
The Quaids.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, I think we knew that about Randy, but I don't know if I knew that about Dennis Quaid. But not surprising, I guess. So it was quoted, MAGA weird actor. This is Ron Filipowski's coverage of this. MAGA weird actor clip number 2, I missed number 1, is Dennis Quaid explaining that the reason why he supports Trump, people might call him an a-hole, he just comes right out and said it, but he's my a-hole, which immediately is like,
okay,
Donald Trump.
We've always said that about him.
He's Dennis Quaid's a-hole. Like, okay. Yeah. Like, well, he looks the part. Is that what you mean? Right out of Central Casting? Well, okay. And just the reaction was funny. People like,
I want to see what the campaign banner has up on your website.
Isn't he all of our a-holes, really, when you get down to it? Right. He's the a-holes we met along the way.
Proctology? What's going on here?
I don't know. But that lifts the veil on weird. It's all over. They're not weird anymore, everybody.
So I'm going to move to this Josh Marshall piece.
My, oh my. Yes, all right.
A miscellany of observations. He says, there's no way getting around this. What we're now seeing in the campaign is the outer bounds of what I thought was possible.
That is
Biden
out of
Harris
bounds.
switch.
Okay.
We're looking at a 4 to 5 point move in Harris's direction. It's going to be more in just 2 weeks. My bullish scenario was Harris resetting the campaign to the status quo ante before the big debate, at which point Biden wasn't in bad position. He's in a position to win, but he's clearly slightly behind, and then he has to claw his way back. And from there, a more dynamic Harris campaign uses the remaining 3 months of the campaign to get in the lead. But that's not what we're seeing. Harris is holding all of Biden's strength in the blue wall states, adding to it, moving the southern tier into contention. Her current popular vote margin is moving into the range the Democrat needs to outright win the election. From the moment Harris got in, I noted the critical battle of defining her public image. I noted yesterday this is a fight Trump campaign is so far decisively losing. They put out messages in recent days explaining they're still devising a plan. That's an astonishing admission because the window's closing. Obviously, there's a lot of campaign to go, but not that much. Mm-hmm. The initial definitions usually stick. This week is likely to be taken up by free media generated by Harris's VP pick. In 2 weeks from today, the Democratic convention starts. In other words, we're leading into the part of the campaign, which is mostly a commercial for Democrats. The GOP did that 3 weeks ago, I would add, and by the way, he also got shot at.
Yeah.
There was their commercial, but they ran their convention against the wrong candidate. Basically, they want a do-over, is what he's saying.
Right.
The Trump campaign is in a tight position because their own party commercial period was swamped by the candidate switch. There's a sizable shift in Harris's direction, and the Democrats' campaign commercial window, even if it doesn't result in more poll gains, is going to hold a lot of the press attention for the next couple of weeks, basically keeping Trump on the sidelines, except for his nutty stuff, like when he comes to Atlanta and attacks Brian Kemp's wife, which he did over the weekend.
Well, he likes doing that. And
there's an appetite brewing in major segments of the political press. And that gets back to the way they were covering the Walz pick, strictly from a GOP point of view.
Yeah.
There's an appetite brewing in major segments of the political press for Harris's momentum and press dominance to end. The Times had a piece a week ago saying Harris's honeymoon was ending.
Yeah.
That turned out to be editors trying to manifest a reality into existence, and it didn't work. The Hotline just ran a couple of pieces arguing Harris will soon have to start dealing with policy issues, which she allegedly hasn't. A National Journal piece headlines, Harris's reasons for running remain murky. The vice president has yet to succinctly define her vision for the United States. Now, wanting to know where a candidate stands on big issues is reasonable, but Harris is pretty clearly running on Biden's policies. You don't have to
Is there a website?
Her positions on the big issues are clear. Her electoral interest is to keep her momentum moving and not get picked apart by press questions. Reporters want to dig in details. A lot of this is code for wanting her to shift to talking about Gaza and inflation, because that's what reporters want to talk about. I'm not even sure the public wants to talk about that.
Yeah.
But that's what reporters want to talk about. And they're really mad because it wasn't Josh Shapiro, so now you can't talk about that.
What are they, anti-Semitic?
No, but they're pro-stirring shit.
Hey, okay.
She doesn't want to do that, says Josh Marshall. As long as the story is her rise, she's not under a lot of pressure to do either, at least not on anything but her own terms. Either way, this is a press dynamic to keep an eye on. So basically, what you can anticipate, Josh is saying in so many words, the CNN's going to put up a ticker X days since Harris gave a press conference. Because that's what they do. They want to talk to her. They want the exclusives. They want to be the one to break the news. She's not cooperating. She's not doing any of that. She's going around campaigning, talking directly to voters with local media and having fun, and they can't stand it.
Yeah. Well, how is she going to connect with voters if she doesn't sit in an office somewhere in a sterile environment and allow me to filter her words?
Right, exactly. They did the same thing with Obama. It didn't work.
Sure, okay.
So now she's going to campaign. I guess she's going to maybe Wisconsin today.
Is that nearby?
I'm not sure. But she's then going to go to Detroit in Michigan. And Josh Marshall himself is reporting there's already 47,000 requests for tickets. They have to get a bigger venue. They're going to have to do it in a bigger baseball stadium.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. And they should offer the same venue a few days later to Trump and Vance. And then he'll say, the CIA assassinated most of the ticket holders. That's why they're not here.
Did you know that J.D. Vance is tailing Harris and Walz? Like, this isn't creepy or anything like that.
I know he was in Philly. Okay.
And he's going to go and be in whatever city they're in and give a press conference. And the reason you didn't know that is because it's not working and nobody gives a crap.
Yeah, well, right. Sure, I can understand that. I don't. He doesn't have anything to say. It doesn't help the weird.
Campaigning. You know, what's Trump doing? Trump is playing golf and stewing and writing stuff on Truth Social that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. And that's it.
Yeah.
You got no juice, that guy.
That's true. And I don't know. I don't know whether Kamala Harris is going with Walz. I imagine at some point they split off.
Now they have to campaign together just to introduce him.
A little bit, yeah. I'm wondering how long.
And they split up. And they basically send him to Barstool Sports and sports bars all over rural Nevada and Wisconsin.
What a bad job.
And football games. He should do every Friday night. High school football game exists. You know, go to the training sessions and such. And he's perfect for that. Yeah. And just, pick up a few votes.
Well, it's interesting as the two of them campaign together in the kickoff, then watching J.D. Vance not only trailing behind them and like, I don't know, weirdo puppy dog and then trying to give a press conference. But also, by the way, your big partner in all of this is like, I don't want to talk to that guy. I'm going to hang out at Pervalago and play golf. He doesn't want to really have anything to do with him.
Like, they're a team, right?
Yeah. I mean, who?
Harris and Walz.
They are, yes.
They're campaigning. They share the same vision, right?
Yes.
You agree with all of that?
Yes.
So just for fun.
Okay.
They should send Harris to the Friday night football games, and they should send Walz to the black sorority meetings.
Yeah. Try one out.
And just do one.
Yeah. That'd be interesting.
It's like when the reporters who cover the Democrats and the Republicans switch for one rally, and then you get like a completely different point of view. Based on, I've been covering Republicans, man. I'm watching this Democratic thing, and wow.
Yeah. It's kind of interesting.
You know what?
Give it a shot.
Walz would come away fantastic.
He would.
There was a story
he's
about
adorable.
him
we love
as
him.
a teacher when he first got there. And this is one of those pranks that people do, So he's a first-year teacher, and the teachers get together, and they give him a fake certificate.
Okay.
That says you're entitled to a free turkey if you just take it to your local grocery store. And I see, just like a homecoming, a welcome wagon package.
Okay.
We baked a pie for you. It's the Midwest, and
sure.
We're giving you this ticket for a free turkey. And it's Minnesota, where turkey is considered a vegetable,
Okay.
So they give it to him. It's fake, right?
And then he'll get in trouble at the store.
So he goes to the store and he comes out with a turkey. Tim Walz is the only guy who could do that. I don't know how he did it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, maybe. Funny. Yeah. I guess he's supposed to get there and the manager says no.
True. It doesn't matter. That's Tim Walz.
Yeah. Now the turkeys are in his backyard, apparently. I have seen some photos of his circulated on social media that the turkeys are hanging out in his yard. Yeah. So not only did he get free turkeys, but they came and moved into
this came because one of those charming discussions he had with his daughter Hope on one of those little videos that they show on TikTok.
Oh?
Right. So he's driving and they're at the state fair.
Okay.
And he says, you know what? It's time to go eat. How about a corn dog? And she says, Dad, I'm a vegetarian. He says, okay, well, I'll get you a turkey sandwich. And she said, turkey? I'm a vegetarian. And Walz said, no, this is Minnesota. Turkey special.
Okay. There's a big culinary side to this thing. Apparently, and this I know nothing about, but I'm excited to try hot dish. Apparently, he's the Minnesota congressional delegation champion for his hot dish recipes, which is sort of maybe am I wrong? Is a casserole sort of thing with tater tots on top and everything, and it's a cultural phenomenon.
She's
okay.
She's an expert.
Yeah, well, he's So, but food's a big part of it, and normal people
they're
like
good friends.
that.
She can tell you all about it.
And they cook, and they're not like they don't have people over for hamburgers, and you're going to have a championship team over and give them fast food.
The top Rhode Island caramaric, but if you're going to talk about food, this is like normal people. He's a normal person. Thank goodness.
Yeah, and I mean, they'll point at the daughter's a vegetarian. Yeah, like, show me the American family where, dad is a big food fan and the daughter isn't a vegetarian. And they have that wacky interaction, and then they go find her something vegetarian to eat, and he has, I was interested to see how he would handle the cheesesteak thing. And everybody said, well, he'll just order both ways and eat them both. Yeah.
He'll have one of each.
Right. And I think it worked.
One at Geno's. I mean, no problem.
Cool. All right. We'll see you again tomorrow. Talk more about this.
Yeah. Take care.
All right. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Let's see. Where to go from here? Gosh. I already have there's a theme thing. I might have to save that for Friday. Florida /education / Ron DeSantis is destroying everything theme. The New York Times, as I said, kind of going with isn't 24 hours of positivity about Tim Walz enough? Let's do something here. The headline, where they usually do their biggest damage, isn't terrible. It's just, there's an ominous hint to it, I guess. But their social media sales, their social media pitch of the piece was more the issue. And I don't think, did I save that? I don't know. But people were circulating this widely this morning, trying to illustrate the fact that the, New York Times refuses to be on board with all of this. What was it that they said? I can't even remember. Well, maybe we can find the thing online. But the article itself isn't all that bad, and they pitch it with what Minnesota voters think of Tim Walz, which is, what you'd want to know. But again, the online pitch was basically, as it turns out, he's not really the widely popular guy that they want you to think he is. He was only elected governor, statewide. And somehow it was did that happen without the support of most of the voters? No, it did. I guess this was the pitch here. They used maybe the subheader was more the pitch they were going with than the headline, because the headline doesn't say anything, but the subheader was, "The governor succeeded in projecting an avuncular image," which is probably what they're all running around in rural Minnesota saying, yeah, it's avuncular, that's the problem. But not all voters are convinced that he rose above partisanship or united the state. Well, I don't think he was supposed to rise above partisanship. It just so happened that his partisanship was 1, normal, 2, rather jolly in its approach, and 3, not correct, by the way, as it turns out, correct enough that he would win the governorship and win policy success in the legislature. By the way, another observation that I marked down that seems to have been seems to really cut through and clarify what's going on here is that, 1, he's a part of the Democratic Party from a sort of a different-ish, certainly a different region and different wing. That is to say that where there are strong Democratic majorities in coastal states where they win the governorship and the legislature and win strong majorities in the legislature, the tendency nonetheless, for whatever reason, is to proceed cautiously and immediately tack to the center and let's try to court swing voters and moderate Republicans and bring them together in some sort of unified government, but govern very cautiously and very moderately and not press the advantage of even a narrow majority when you have the trifecta in your state. Whereas the Midwest approach of late, anyway, has been, look, we want a majority, as slim as it is. We want a majority in the state legislature. We hold the governorship. Let's press our advantage. Let's govern. Let's do the things we said we wanted to do. Let's not take the coastal approach where they should be able to steamroller everybody, but won't. And I'm not saying we should steamroller people, but look, we campaigned on this is what we wanted to do. We won a majority. Let's do it. And it's a different approach, and it's the right approach, especially in this day and age with Republicans not winning majorities or not controlling majorities of the votes in this country anyway, and still opting for the steamroller model for sure. So that's definitely an important change in the approach. Well, anyway, the New York Times needed to say all of this enthusiasm for Walz, why is it really bad? Essentially. Isn't it true that it's all just an act? Sure, he's happy and jolly and people love him and he's been winning policy victories on all fronts. But isn't it all just a bunch of crap? Let's talk to some people who voted for the other guy in the election and see why they think that the guy who won that they didn't vote for but is happy nonetheless is actually crap. Well, I don't think we actually need to read the story outright, but I guess we'll try and give you the flavor for how they approached it. I'm sure the writers of the story would say, well, that's not what we meant to do, and we weren't trying to get to that. It's Rob Murray, Christina Capecchi, Capecchi, maybe, Dan Simmons, Jeff Ernst, and Richard Fawcett. Apologies of sorts to anybody whose name got mispronounced in any weird ways. And here's what they actually produced. If Governor Tim Walz has achieved anything, thank you, by the way, after 18 years in public office, this is, that's not what they meant exactly, but, that's a subtext to it. If Walz has achieved anything after 18 years in public office, it has been to convince many of his fellow Minnesotans that he is decidedly not weird. So here, backhand sort of a way, right? If he's achieved anything, which is doubtful, then at the very least, what he has convinced them of is that he's not weird. However, all he's done is actually convinced people of that. It's not true, but he's fooled them all into thinking he's not weird by consistently being not weird. But it's all an act, as you see. On Tuesday, what's this person's name? Anna Keiko, maybe? Wow. Anna Keiko Rachel Frink. I mean, look, I can get along with just about any name, but if you're trying to say Tim Walz, he convinced people he's not weird, but he really is weird. How do we know this? We talked to regular sounding person Anna Keiko Rachel Frink. I mean, look, I got nothing against the name. I run into names like that all the time. It's perfectly normal, I'm sure. She's a teacher, as a matter of fact, and she calls him a very normal human being. That's true, and it's very nice of her, and I'm sure that she thinks that that's the case. It's just sort of interesting that, like, well, let's lead off with this. He's normal. He's so normal that let's show you. We can bring you the names of the people who think he's normal. For instance, this totally abnormal name. And nothing wrong with it. Anna Keiko. That's interesting. And it's all one word. ANNAKEIKO. Reichel, I'm guessing REICHEL hyphen Frink, like Professor Frink from The Simpsons. You're not supposed to think he's weird at all. So this is what they offer you. Sure, he's normal, but look at the people who think he's normal. Wackos. She's a teacher from Mankato. I don't know how they pronounce his. This is his hometown, right, where he was a teacher. She says Mr. Walz is a very normal human being. Another non-American Joe Smith named Maria Bevacqua, a college professor from the same small city where Mr. Walz once taught at the high school, described him as, who cares, right? She's got a weird last name. Somebody who you would bump into at the grocery store, which you would, and he would say, excuse me. Adam Luth, Lueth, a college student who's leaning toward the Republican ticket, even so, says that Mr. Walz, a Democrat, comes across as a genuine guy. Mr. Walz was thrust into the national spotlight on Tuesday, and not even ready or whatever, even though he did fine. When Kamala Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee, announced that he would be her running mate, the second-term governor seemed to rocket to the top of the list after he used one word quite effectively against Donald Trump, the Republican candidate. He was simply being weird. And true, that did rocket him to the top of the list, it seems, because it resonated. In other words, which one of you guys can help me capture the zeitgeist of the campaign? I can. All right, so should I choose you? Well, that would be weird and crazy to choose the guy who actually says, no, I can see what's going on here, and here's how you deal with it. Mr. Walz has succeeded in projecting an avuncular, affable, relentlessly norm-core image to Minnesotans. Not really normal, he's norm-core, you see. But on Tuesday, in interviews across the state, voters also seemed less than convinced that Governor Walz had succeeded in rising above partisanship or in uniting the state as one Minnesota, as his 2018 campaign slogan put it. Look, what can I tell you? This is an objective truth. I have observed it. The guy promised to unite everyone in Minnesota, and there are still people who didn't vote for him. Therefore, his campaign was built on lies. I mean, you can get there if you want to. That perceived lack of unity may partially be the result of Mr. Walz's political formula. That gets dramatic music, I guess, in our heads anyway. Political formula, which has tended to serve up dollops of Minnesota nice over an ambitious progressive policy agenda. One that has its roots in Minnesota politicians like Hubert Humphrey or Walter Mondale. Wait a minute. Those are good things. Those are successful Minnesota politicians. Not necessarily successful presidential politicians, but successful Minnesota politicians. And guess where he's from? Yeah. I mean, those are highly accomplished, famous, well-regarded politicians. But there you go. Anyway, but it may also be the case that a nice guy candidate, even one whom voters could imagine having a beer with, if anyone was interested in that standard, New York Times, has limited power to charm nowadays, when hot tempers and invective seem to be the rule. So I guess we'll go that way instead. All right. I think you get the flavor of what's going on here. They're just striving to make a story out of it, but of course, you know how they frame stories. We got to find a way to make this a negative, and they strive mightily for it, and I just don't think it works, but there's more backlash against it than anything else. All right, let's see what else we have here. Some of these things we have to click on in order to figure out what they are. No segue to that one yet. Let's try this. When you're stuck and not sure which direction to go, a good solution, in my view, is to turn to Amanda Marcotte. And this is important because she's in Philadelphia. Not because she's following the campaign, but because she's from Philadelphia. And the campaign came to her and she said, I cover politics. Let's see what's going on here. Why don't I do something crazy and dumb and go to both rallies? Or both appearances. I don't know what they called the Vonce appearance. But as Greg told you, he's shadowing them and following them around and going to say negative things about them after they have their happy fest. So, anyway, she went to both of these things, and here's the report. Bringing back the joy. That's the quote. Kamala Harris's rally blows away J.D. Vance's weird appearance across town. Well, okay. We know where she's coming from, and we're glad she is coming from that direction. So that's why we're reading it. No surprise here, and it's not, I'm not trying to tell you that's the objective truth, although, you know, it might be. But in Philadelphia, thousands cheered for Tim Walz while Trump's running mate, and not Trump, because he was nowhere to be found, spoke to a small, aggrieved group. And that's likely to be the case in Philadelphia. That's, I mean, one of the shortcomings of the strategy, besides being weird, of following Walz and Harris around during this introductory tour, is that Harris and Walz are going to go, generally speaking, to places where they have big-time support. And where they have big-time support, there won't be as much in the way of big-time support for Vonce, and he may have to go, they may just start to say, well, let's put him in the exurbs around the city that they go to and find the Trump pockets and say, yes, this is an exurb of the city where they had their thing, but it's more or less that city, and we'll just tell the press that it's that city and see if that works. Maybe that will we'll begin to see that happening. Anyway, so he spoke to a small aggrieved group, and who else are you going to find in Philadelphia when you're looking for Trump supporters? Philly's pretty solid. Anyway, he's so weird. He's so weird, the crowd chanted in a sing-song, taunting voice. So maybe, I don't know what, that's it. I thought it would be just a chant, he's so weird. But maybe they had some, you had to hear it. I don't know. I can't imagine how it would be, but there was definitely some chanting organically arising from the crowd. This in a sing-song, taunting voice that echoed across Temple University's packed basketball stadium Tuesday evening. And Temple is a big-time basketball program, so that stadium is going to be rather large. Governor Josh Shapiro, you've heard about him, was the first person to mention Senator J.D. Vonce. I wonder how he said it. He probably said Vance, but Vonce, to the crowd, he's the first mention of it, that packed the overflowing Philadelphia rally for Vice President Kamala Harris as she introduced her running mate, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota. The spontaneous chant cracked Shapiro up, causing him to pause momentarily before laying back into the authoritarian threat posed by Donald Trump's weird and beardy running mate. The chanters didn't know the half of it. Hours earlier, I had been at a South Philly venue where Vonce spoke briefly to about 200 supporters and a group of bored journalists. Vonce's event, I'm just going to keep that up, I think, was small, mean, and yes, weird, featuring the unjustified sarcasm of the candidate and a desperate feeling reminiscent of the mood at a strip mall shot bar at 2 a.m. on ladies' night. You get the idea? Meanwhile, the Harris-Walz rally felt like a rousing speech by Coach Eric Taylor of Friday Night Lights, combined with the front row at Coachella. Okay, young vibe. Maybe. Not as young as they think they are. I don't know. The cheers were so loud that I regretted not bringing my earplugs. The mood was jubilant, even though folks had to wait hours in the heat and humidity to even get into the place. The campaign claimed that over 12,000 people showed up, which is a welcome change, by the way, from the Trump campaign, claiming that 4.2 billion people had showed up. But they say, Amanda agrees that this is not an exaggeration, this 12,000. Even as Harris and Walz gave the final speeches of the evening, the line to get into the overflow room just to watch the event on TV went on for multiple city blocks. Thank you for bringing back the joy, Walz said to a thunderous reception. A simple line, but it brought the house down because of the plain-spoken truth Walz had swiftly become famous for. Joy was the right word, the word of the night. People in the stands practically vibrated with it. In the air was a visceral hope that this campaign would be the end of the long national nightmare that is Trump and the MAGA movement. That feels pretty true. All right. The crowd was so exuberant, not avuncular, but exuberant, that Harris and Walz could have done shadow puppets and the place would have erupted. And, it's not a bad idea, actually. Anyway, even before they spoke, DJ Diamond Cuts had the crowd repurposing classic hip-hop lyrics into political chants, with the funniest being, "Move, Trump, get out of the way," rather than the expletive used in the original ludicrous tune, with which we're all so familiar. But at least Amanda was, so that's good. That helps, because otherwise I'm like, what? Okay, sure. But both brought their A game. Harris drew ecstatic applause with her promises to end Trump's criminal career. Walz has honed Minnesota nice into a deadly rhetorical weapon, making his desire to help people sincerely felt, while also making weird burn like Dorothy Parker's ghost had insulted you. Vonce's speech, on the other hand, wasn't just underwhelming, but a little uncanny. Despite using room dividers to shrink the space, it's a good trick, the campaign could not hide that the crowd felt like a medium-sized wedding, albeit a pathetic one where no one cares for the couple. Vonce, perhaps recognizing charisma isn't his strong suit, and even his suits aren't his strong suit, spoke briefly before bringing up a series of local citizens ready to blame Mexicans for their familial tragedies of drug addiction. What a good show. He spoke for a couple more minutes before taking the reporters' questions about cat ladies. Even in his short speech, it seemed Vonce, like the Trump campaign overall, is still struggling to accept that they are running against Harris and not President Joe Biden. It felt like the speechwriter had typed Control F Biden and replaced every instance with Harris, whether it made sense or not. Vonce accused Harris of hiding from the press with a basement campaign, for instance. That's the old attack against 2020 Joe Biden, not just Biden, but the old version. Never mind that Harris is now the young and spry candidate who can keep up with an aggressive schedule, while Trump is the tired old man who can barely campaign between naps. Yeah. One upside of the Vonce event, there was no line to use the ladies' room. Sure, there were women in attendance, but the gender ratio felt like the guest list on Joe Rogan's podcast. There was one kind of diversity in this small but weirdly intense crowd. Every type of white man that gets a hasty swipe left on his dating profile was in attendance. Roided out dudes with bad tribal tattoos. Older men radiating bitter divorce energy. Men with enormous beards that have never known the touch of a trimmer. Skinny fascists wearing expensive suits despite the oppressive heat. Glowering loners staring at the two women under 40 like cats watching birds out a window. It's not just about Vance or Vonce either. The Trump campaign often has the dwindling energy of a concert for a D-list band well past its prime. As my colleague Andrew O'Hare, I am guessing is O'Hare is the pronunciation of O''Heir, probably, I hope, wrote of the Republican National Convention. As he said, it was a startlingly quiet, polite, low-energy event without the chaotic, unhinged, angry energy of the 2016 convention. As far as the Salon team could figure out, this was born out in the numbers. The Cleveland convention of 2016 brought an estimated 44,000 people. Despite Gops predictions that this year's would be even bigger, the Secret Service told Salon only 27,000 people had credentials to enter this year. Trump has already started floating conspiracy theories, such as insisting officials are keeping invisible fans away from his events. This is an old line of his anyway. To explain away the perceived difference in crowd enthusiasm at his rallies versus the excited reception Harris has for her fledgling campaign. There's a lot of chatter in MAGA circles about how the enthusiasm for Harris is manufactured, as if all the people bringing down the house on an early Tuesday evening in Philadelphia are phantoms instead of real people. But boy, I was there, and are they very real. More than that, the contrast with the Vonce event underscored the Democratic messaging about normal versus weird. The people who flooded the Temple Stadium looked like any cross-section of America on any given night. There was old, young, and all in between. They were tattooed hipsters and soccer moms. There were people of every race, dressed in every which way. It could have been a crowd of people chosen at random from the streets of Philadelphia or any city in America, really. They were brought together by the chant, quickly becoming the Harris campaign slogan, "Not going back." They were also brought together in laughter when Walz offered a corny dad joke about Vonce. You heard it earlier today. I can't wait to debate J.D. Vance, he said. That is, if he's willing to get off the couch and show up. Like all good dad jokes, the sexual innuendo is implied in the faintest of ways, but really the sexual innuendo is almost beside the point. It's just another way to say, as the crowd has chanted merely half an hour earlier, he's so weird. But in a nice way, like your high school football coach ought to. Necessary caveat she throws in here at the end, Trump can still win. Indeed, as Harris reminded the screaming crowd, she's still the underdog in polling. There are still millions of Americans so poisoned by political polarization and Fox News propaganda that they can see the swelling crowd at a Harris campaign and feel resentment and fear instead of joy. But it's still a hopeful sign that the MAGA hate just isn't moving the masses like Harris's not going back message seems to be doing. It may even be enough to finally tilt the polls toward the outcome most Americans want, which is not and never has been Trumpism. So, good reporting in ways that we'll like from someone who was on the ground at both events. You wouldn't have expected anything different in her report, but it was a comfort to hear it nonetheless. So there you have it. I guess by way of continuing the story of who is this J.D. Vonce after all, and what kind of a weirdo is he exactly? There's more reporting on that. There's probably another undisclosed trip for Clarence Thomas as well, but we have this one ahead of us, or in front of us from the Washington Post, J.D. Vonce, in texts with far-right figure is seen to be, the colon implies here, profane and off the cuff. The real serious issue here is that this is his ongoing texting conversation with the bad Charles Johnson, the rage Furby, as they used to call him before rage was all the rage in Republican politics. And yes, the one that you have heard through rumors that have been, churned up and reconfirmed from time to time by people who say they were there. The guy who decided to demonstrate his edgelordism back in the day when he was in college by taking a dump in the middle of the college dorm room floor. Tell me they're not weird. Go ahead. Give it a shot. Isaac Stanley Becker and Beth Reinhard put this story together, most of which you will hear after the break, which is coming right up. The day after J.D. Vonce was elected to the U.S. Senate in 2022, he received a congratulatory text from Charles Johnson, whom they describe differently. They describe him accurately enough as a blogger and entrepreneur who has zealously promoted right-wing conspiracy theories. Yes, but of course, if you recognize who they're talking about, you know that there's a whole backstory with this guy. Johnson assumed the posture of a wise mentor. He's like the elder statesman in this relationship, which is really remarkable and speaks to how long he's been around and how young J.D. Vonce really is. But he assumed the posture of a wise mentor, cautioning the first-time office holder to choose his staff carefully and repeatedly pressing him on his committee assignments. Got to keep you out of trouble, wrote Johnson, who now describes himself as a government informant seeking to protect the United States from foreign influence. Okay, fine. Say what you want, but this is a guy who's known as an intensely weird person.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Just spent a little bit of time reviewing the usually anodyne Wikipedia profile for Charles Johnson. Well-known internet troll for years, and it's just amazing that he's now, he's 35 years old, which is younger than Vonce. But somehow he gets cast as the elder statesman here, a mentor, which is remarkable. Assuming the posture of a wise mentor. First of all, he's not wise. No one should use him as a mentor. And he's younger than Vonce. And he's never been elected to anything. He's just been an internet troll, which is, so it's astonishing, of course, that Vonce would subject himself to this. But instead, he's soliciting his advice, which is amazing. Anyway, we'll give you the prepared remarks here from the Washington Post. Johnson assumed the posture of a wise mentor. Got to keep you out of trouble, yada, yada. And he now describes himself, it's interesting how he describes himself, as a government informant seeking to protect the United States from foreign influence. And I'd recommend you take a stroll through the Wikipedia profile. One, to remind yourself of those stories you might have forgotten about Charles Johnson. And two, just to see, the number of entries in how do they style this section? Controversies, right? They give a quick rundown of him. Johnson is an American political activist who was a public figure in the years 2013 to 2019. Like, what? It's just a weird description. He was a public figure then, and he isn't now, or I don't know what. A self-described investigative journalist, although now he describes himself as a government informant seeking to protect the United States from foreign influence. Johnson is often described as an internet troll and has been repeatedly involved in the proliferation and spread of multiple fake news stories, and that's putting it mildly. He's started multiple websites and published a couple of books. Johnson, whose family served in the intelligence services and the U.S. Navy, was revealed to be a federal informant by Business Insider through a federal lawsuit against Clearview AI. Okay, fine. And if you're interested in what college did he poop on the floor in, it would have been Claremont McKenna College, apparently. So anyway, controversies. There's a Peter Thiel controversy of some kind. There's a Bob Menendez controversy of some kind. Cory Booker, David D. Kirkpatrick, Malaysia Airlines Flight 370, 2014 Mississippi Republican primary election, Ferguson, Missouri, University of Virginia rape article in the Rolling Stone column in 2014, banning from Twitter. Did you realize that he had been banned from Twitter over attacking DeRay McKesson? There's more. I mean, the point is that there's multiple. Still, I'm only about halfway through the list of controversies in his Wikipedia entry. This is the kind of person you're talking about. And this is the kind of person J.D. Vance is spending his time chatting with via text, looking for, I'm a United States Senator now. How should I do things? What should I do now that I'm Senator? Why did I get elected? And he turns to Charles Johnson for this advice. Their correspondence over the next 20 months. Like I said, I only talked to him once or twice. 20 months. Extending into the weeks before former President Donald Trump picked Vonce as his running mate, offers a glimpse of the Republican vice presidential nominee's off-the-cuff musings, often matching his public expressions, but voiced with much less polish. Oof, I had trouble saying that one. Vonce was just as casual in discussing America's foreign alliances as he was in evaluating his own private alliances with the Gops moneyed class. With Johnson, he pondered responsibility for the sabotage of the Nord Stream gas pipelines and crudely described his aversion to the Ukrainian government and refusal to consider its pleas for U.S. assistance. Dude, I won't even take calls from Ukraine, he told Johnson in October, about 3 weeks after House Republicans blocked additional aid to help Kyiv repel the Russian invasion. That's a weird thing to admit to. Two very senior guys reached out to me, the head of their intel, the head of their Air Force, bitching about F-16s. That's what he's talking about. In response to questions about its correspondence with Johnson, Vonce spokesman William Martin said the two were never close and don't share the same politics. Just 20 months worth of text, that's all. Chuck Johnson spam texted J.D. Vance, Martin said. J.D. usually ignored him, but occasionally responded to push back against things he said. Dude, I won't even talk to Ukraine, man. What pushback? The text sent over the encrypted messaging signal app and provided by Johnson to the Washington Post. I mean, no one knows what the hell's wrong with that guy. Show the 40-year-old senator engaged in the kind of freewheeling communication ordinarily tightly controlled by congressional staff. As a newly minted senator, Vonce solicited Johnson's views on many topics, which is dumb. But by the way, what sort of topics? Well, they included his advice on UFOs. Hey, guy who took a dump on the college dorm floor, what do you think about UFOs? What is your read, he asks him, on UFOs. Well, what else? The Republican Party's relationship with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, for instance. What is GOP-BB problem? And the death of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. How did that get into the conversation? And his question to him was, do you think Epstein actually killed himself? You know, that's not Johnson spam texting Vonce. That's Vonce spam texting Johnson. When Johnson suggested that the senator should work to restrict foreign ownership of U.S. housing, Vonce responded with a thumbs up emoji. I don't know what we're supposed to make of that, but I think the more revealing is that he's texting Johnson, hey, what do you think about Epstein? And by the way, there was an entry in the Wikipedia article about that mentioned Epstein. Did we get to it? I don't think so. I skipped over a couple of them, or I stopped reading. By the way, more controversies listed here. Charlottesville rally, Trump campaign WikiLeaks liaison That, I think, was the last time we noticed him, demonstrably in the public discourse. Fraudulent sexual harassment claims against Senator Charles Schumer. Holocaust denial. Where's the, I'm pretty sure that there was there we are. Oh, okay. This is in a separate section. There's a section about his books, very brief. Then the Gawker lawsuit. Remember that? I didn't realize that he was even involved in that. June 2015, Johnson sued Gawker for defamation in Missouri for $66 million for Gawker's publication of rumors that Johnson defecated on the floor while a student at Claremont McKenna College, and filed a similar lawsuit in California in December. In January of 2016, the Missouri suit was dismissed. Johnson settled with the then-defunct Gawker in 2018. But in case you were saying, but Gawker, the suit, I thought that was Peter Thiel. Yes, it was. Remember that he was involved with Thiel. That was the first one we mentioned. Johnson has a long-standing relationship with Thiel, including collaboration on strategy against Gawker and for the work of the Trump campaign, for work for the Trump campaign, as outlined in detail in the book The Contrarian. I guess that's one of his two books. Johnson both recruited and outed Thiel as a federal informant to Business Insider. So that's a weird relationship. Recruiting Peter Thiel to something is pretty amazing. But then I mentioned to you also that there was Jeffrey Epstein stuff. There is the section after the Gawker lawsuit is a section that says work with Jeffrey Epstein and Steve Bannon. Might as well read that to give some context to what we're reading about from the Washington Post. This is a little bit of an aside, but let's weave it together. On October 18th, 2021, more than 2 years after the death of Jeffrey Epstein, Johnson discussed his Breitbart boss and mentor, Steve Bannon's relationship with the pedophile and human trafficker in an interview with Rolling Stone reporter Seth Hetena. Steve Bannon met with Epstein multiple times after exiting the White House, including in December of 2017. This was while Johnson was being managed by Bannon at Breitbart. Johnson told Rolling Stone that Bannon viewed Epstein as both a rival and spy and was deeply interested in emulating Epstein's operation. Holy macaroni, why would you ever? Bannon also offered to introduce Johnson to Epstein, and Johnson claims he declined, but continued to work under Bannon at Breitbart. In addition, Johnson declared in the Rolling Stone piece that he quietly shifted with an F, his allegiance from Donald Trump to Joe Biden. I don't believe I remember that happening. Likely after the presidential election or sometime in early 2021. Definitely an oddball kind of guy. And by the way, you don't have to accept his support for Joe Biden, and you don't have to believe that he really did it. But let me just sidetrack again. I'm just thinking of, I don't think I registered that Johnson worked at Breitbart. And I don't think I knew explicitly it doesn't surprise me in the least, but I don't think I knew too much about the relationship between Epstein and Bannon, and that Bannon offered to introduce Johnson to Epstein, and Johnson claims he declined, but continued to work under Bannon at Breitbart. And when we were speaking the other day of the Egypt bribery story, and then noting that kind of missing from the discussion was, hey, does this have anything to do with the fact that it was an Egyptian member of parliament and oligarch who still may be letting Bannon live in the D.C. mansion, D.C. townhouse / mansion that became known as the Breitbart Embassy, where Breitbart was doing all their work, where they were publishing from in Washington, D.C. And I was reminded of and I don't know if I brought it back up and shared it with everybody, but I have sitting in pocket the contemporaneous reporting of the time of how Breitbart's offices were used to host big parties for the alt-right in their day, and how they had this really, as described by attendees, really weird and intense, deviant sexual energy going on, which was really unusual and incongruous with the sort of type of event that was happening, except for the fact that it was Trump World, and that Trump World is a sex cult, as I told you many times over the course of many, many years. And this was an example, an illustration of it, but I don't think I didn't connect Epstein with it. How else would he host a party, Epstein? Every interaction he has socially, privately or publicly, is sexual and deviant sexual in nature. And it should surprise no one that this carried over to Breitbart. But there the vibe was more like, you're an intensely weird person. Normal sexual relationships are not for you, and they are not going to happen to you, but you desire them nonetheless. You have the intensity of, you're the same kind, you're cut from the same cloth as the weirdo incels who are driven to murder by this obsession. But they can't seem to find people that are right for them because they're intensely weird. And people from, people that you're looking to hook up with can sense this and want to get away from you. But if you can get them laid nonetheless, you're their hero forever, and they'll do anything they can for you. And that was sort of the vibe of how Bannon got people to work for him and for Breitbart and to do the crazy bidding of the crowd he ran with. He'd get them laid, and they were loyal to him forever. I just want to throw that out there as background. I'm going back to the Washington Post now. We won't be talking about any of that stuff, but that's on the record and true, and you should know it, and it will be important context for understanding the rest of this stuff. So, where were we? The mostly friendly conversation with Johnson reflects how Vonce gravitates to people on the political fringe, a cohort emboldened by Trump's insurgent campaign in 2016, and melded with him forever in that he brought his sex cult energy to their weirdo incel world and bridged the gap, so to speak, for them. After Trump picked Vonce as his running mate, maybe we want to say Schwanz in all of this as well, as his running mate on July 15th, Johnson has been criticizing his one-time interlocutor and threatening to release their communications. He said he has grown disillusioned with Vonce, especially over the senator's favorable view of the Israeli prime minister, and now supports President Biden and Vice President Harris, the Democratic presidential nominee. I mean, whatever, dude. Don't trust the guy, obviously, from either side. You shouldn't, but, he's just crazy. The guy took a dump on the floor. Maybe he really has these things and is giving them over to the press and the government. I don't know. Johnson, 35, the wizened elder statesman versus the now 40-year-old Vonce, I guess, has spread fantastical claims about a wide range of politicians and journalists, and has made comments casting doubt on the Holocaust, so maybe grain of salt for all of this, I guess. He was banned from Twitter in 2015 for soliciting donations aimed at, quote, taking out Black Lives Matter activist DeRay McKesson. He argued at the time that he was referring to journalistic sleuthing, and his account was restored under the platform's new owner, Elon Musk. So there you go. Johnson has provided information to the FBI in recent years about some of his associates and maintains that his access to far-right circles has allowed him to expose wrongdoing and serve the public good, saying, "My admittedly controversial associations have allowed me to get entry into some of the most fringe spaces, but my commitment to our country hasn't wavered." It was all an undercover operation, you see. Vonce is perhaps the most high-profile emblem of a new breed of conservative politician willing to entertain and endorse provocative or offensive figures. Trump has displayed similar impulses, including in 2022 when he dined at his Pervalago club with Nick Fuentes, an outspoken Holocaust denier. Unlike Trump, however, Vonce has turned his ideological permissiveness, into a political philosophy, an open embrace of the unvetted and the indecent. The unvetted and the indecent. An open embrace of those things aimed at undermining conventional norms of truth and decorum. Vonce has defended his vision as a big tent representing how many Americans actually think. Democrats have described his approach as weird, a label that Harris allies have increasingly applied to the Trump ticket. Vonce has bragged, for instance, of being plugged into a lot of weird right-wing subcultures. He wrote a positive blurb for a book by Jack Posobiec, the far-right activist who advanced the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. And before we move on, also the guy photographed standing in a crowd of protesters outside of the Trump hotel with a sign that read, "Rape Melania." Now, he was saying, I was hoping to make people think that a liberal protester was holding that sign, but he was pretty immediately identified and outed. But it's like, well, but why would you do such a thing? Well, I hope to blame it on someone else, but you did it nonetheless. Yes. Plus, I mean, come on, Pizzagate. The guy's nuts. He has also, Vonce, defended Alex Jones, the right-wing radio host who spread lies about the Sandy Hook school shooting. That's just a bad person. Also weird, but bad. Believing crazy things is not the mark of whether somebody should be rejected, Vonce said in a 2021 speech to the conservative Teneo network that was recently published by ProPublica. Believing important truths should be the mark of whether we accept somebody, and if they believe something crazy on the side, that's fine. We need to be okay with non-conventional people. Those I'm okay with. Weird liars, not so much. In the text, Vonce often seemed skeptical of Johnson. That's a good idea, really. Not because of his association with far-right causes, but rather because of his self-presentation as a spook. If you are who you say you are, then don't you have my phone tapped? Vonce wrote last fall, adding an emoji signaling that he was laughing so hard he was crying. Whatever, man. I don't know. Just don't get involved. Still, the messages suggest Vonce valued Johnson's opinions. The two were introduced over email in 2019 by a Republican fundraiser, according to the correspondence shared with the Post. But Johnson, who helped start the facial recognition company Clearview AI, said they had spoken previously. Though their conversation was generally amicable, they argued about Israel in the messages. Vonce pushed back on Johnson's criticism of Netanyahu, falsely characterizing some of the prime minister's past positions. If the GOP listened to Bibi, we wouldn't have invaded Iraq, wouldn't have done nation building in Afghanistan, and wouldn't be threatening a war with Iran, he wrote. In fact, Netanyahu supported the U.S. invasion of Iraq and had pushed for regime change in Iran, telling Congress in 2002, it's not a question of whether Iraq's regime should be taken out, but when it should be taken out. It's not a question of whether you'd like to see regime change in Iran, but how to achieve it. That was Netanyahu. Vonce said he thought more of Netanyahu's government than of Americans who support interventionist foreign policy. Publicly and privately, not a single rep of the Israeli government has sounded as insane as our neocons, he wrote. His defense of Israel and scorn for neoconservatives shows Vonce saying privately what he often says publicly, so I guess that's okay. But he let his guard down with Johnson, which is dumb, responding to the suggestion that he read an article about the influence of Sheldon Adelson, the late Republican megadonor, by saying, I'm pretty sure he gave me, the word he uses is, that terrible S word. And I've been, by the way, reconsidering the whole thing. And why don't we just read what things say? There's so much that gets on TV these days. And, of course, I was reminded by watching some of the Olympics coverage, the comedic Olympics coverage on Peacock, that as a streaming platform, you're not bound by any of those rules, and we aren't either. So anyway, I'm pretty sure I guess he was trying to say he gave me squat. That is to say that Sheldon Adelson never gave him any money. Never met him, Vonce wrote last year. He's dead, don't care. All right. Adelson died in January of 2021, months before Vonce entered the race for U.S. Senate in Ohio, but his widow, Miriam Adelson, contributed $2,900, I mean, I guess would be the max, to Vonce's campaign, Federal Records show, and she recently gave $5 million to a pro-Trump super PAC with promises to contribute more this year. Well, okay, you should let her know that he said, never met him, he's dead, don't care. A spokesman for the Adelson family, Andy Aboud, said Miriam Adelson spoke Monday to Vonce following a post-inquiry about the senator's message to Johnson. She's unfazed, Aboud said. She will continue to have a good relationship with J.D. Vonce. In the messages, Vonce pushed back on Johnson's accusations that he was beholden to donors and other allies, including his law school mentor, Yale professor Amy Chua, when Johnson suggested that Vonce was channeling Chinese and Israeli interests. Why not? Vonce replied, Chua doesn't tell me anything. He added, I am pretty sure I don't even know another Chinese American. Oh boy. Chua declined to comment. Wow. At times, the conversation was one-sided, with Johnson repeatedly texting Vonce his social media posts without eliciting any response. Late last year, they argued after Johnson challenged Vonce's criticism of the sale of U.S. steel to a Japanese corporation. Stop sending me weird messages, Vonce told Johnson. I find your threatening tone enraging. But occasionally, Vonce took the initiative with Johnson because he loves threatening tones, I guess, reaching out last fall to ridicule the mental state of a pro-Ukraine activist. In a nod to Johnson's purported work for the U.S. government, Vonce suggested he should, quote, have the spooks up the doses of Xanax among the rank and file. An insinuation that Washington was engineering popular support for Ukraine. The following month, he asked for Johnson's take on former intelligence officials' claims that the U.S. government had evidence of alien spacecraft. Good question. In response to a tweet Johnson sent him about Epstein's death, Vonce asked whether he thought it was a suicide, as New York City's medical examiner concluded, and added of the sex offender, also haven't followed story closely, but he seemed like a genuinely bad dude. I was able to see that. On June 24th, as several media outlets reported that Vonce was among Trump's top choices for vice president, Johnson wrote to him, congratulations, good luck. Vonce responded 6 days later, for what? He asked. You assume too much. Johnson warned, don't take it when it's offered. It's a trap. Ha ha, Vonce wrote back. Doubt it's offered. We'll see. I mean, I think he was just trying to hide the ball there in that one. And on July 15th, the day Trump announced his selection, Johnson sent Vonce a message. Lots of reporters asking into you. Well, there you go. So now we know what he did with the request. He turned over his texts to the Washington Post. So, as I said, lots of weird background in this. I had put aside, as I said, some of the weird background of the Breitbart embassy. But just as a reminder, because there's only a couple of minutes left, and we've talked about this before, so maybe it's okay if we don't get all the way through it. But what I was looking at here, inside the Breitbart embassy, where Steve Bannon entertains elites and plots his populist takeover, comes from back in November of 2017 in New York Magazine. Although I guess you're cautioned here, it's Olivia Nuzzi, which is somebody that we tend to take with a grain of salt these days anyway. But you remember this piece? Does this ring a bell for you? It's illustrated with a photo of Steve Bannon and Stephen Miller hanging out in the Breitbart embassy at a party, and it's weird looking all by itself. When Steve Bannon, it begins, was the chief strategist and senior counselor to President Donald Trump, he spent his days and often long into his nights in an office on the first floor of the West Wing, separated from the Oval Office only by his neighbor, Jared Kushner, and the presidential study. I'm sure lots of studying was going on there. He called the space his war room. And as if to prove the point, he removed the comfortable fixtures, the couch and bookshelves, left by its previous tenant, John Podesta, and installed a large whiteboard on which he wrote the promises Trump had made during the campaign: end catch and release, suspend the Syrian refugee program, and so on. Bannon cast himself as a warrior for far-right populism, yada, yada, all of this stuff. But the really serious weirdness appears much deeper in the story when they begin to describe the $2.35 million 3-story townhouse, described sometimes as a townhouse, but I've described it as a bit of a mansion, on Capitol Hill, real estate prices being what they are. This is a townhouse that's worth $2.35 million. And, as we know, owned by a former member of the Egyptian parliament named Mustafa El-Gindi, and there's a lot of weirdness involved in that fact, but the weirdness of the story and what went on there is buried a little bit further down, and, well, perhaps we'll spend some time getting back around to it on Friday or later well, there's no later in the week than Friday, but at some point we'll get back around to it. Maybe you recall it if you're a long-time listener. If not, you'll kind of sort of want to hear these stories, and maybe I can spend some time offline highlighting the parts that I wanted to get to, because it's a long-ish story. But yeah, suffice to say that there are definitely some pull quotes from this thing that at the time when we read them, well, they were a little bit shocking, if not surprising, but they definitely fit in with the weird vibe that would bring together the dorm room crapper guy, Charles Johnson, who now thinks he's a government informant and supports Biden somehow, and Jeffrey Epstein, Steve Bannon, J.D. Vonce. You can't shed the weird, and that's part of the storyline, too. In fact, there's another one waiting in the wings here. Why Trump can't banish the weirdos. And it's not just because he can't get rid of them politically. It's because he's one of the weirdos. He's just got that taint. And I don't mean the one that Dennis Quaid was talking about either. All right. Well, time for us to hand things over to Justice Putnam now for the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. But I think you're getting a hint of the direction of things for the remainder of the week. So we'll carry those messages to you tomorrow, unless something weirder happens between now and then.
Radio.com. You have been listening to Kagro in the Morning with David Waldman.
Well, okay, now time then for an update. I gotta let you know that Justice has had some last-minute tech issues and a little bit of personal business to take care of, so no West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy for today. But, of course, all sorts of various ideas and solutions for bringing you the content you want to hear here on Netroots Radio. Do stay tuned. We'll see you tomorrow.